episode 41 of the Unscripted Company podcast. And as of episode 41, we now know who president number 47 is. Donald J. Trump has been elected. I don't think you can really say reelected, right? Because there was a term in between his first term and what is about to be a second term. So there really wasn't a re-election per se, but he did win the election. So we'll definitely dive into that. We have a lot of takes. I'll say takes. We have a lot of opinion potentially on this one. So this is a fun one that we've been, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Riley, but I think throughout spooky season was fun. We had a great time with that, but it was so hard not to get off topic with everything that was going on in the election cycle, because news moves fast and it's fun to talk about. But at the same time, you know, you can only talk about so much in a single episode without it just turning into chaos.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you do anything election night at all? We'll get into the week overall here in a second, but just out of curiosity, did you do anything election night at all? Or I remember you and I were texting, but I wasn't sure like if you were at, you know, were you at the apartment?
So I was at a, what was I at? What day was that again? It was Tuesday. Right?
Yeah.
Tuesday. What was I at? I was at
I know.
something.
It's been a whole week since then.
God, what was I at? Because you were texting me. And I was at biblical counseling class. So I was in class while the election was going on, and you texted me, and I was like, oh crap, it is the election. So like, as I'm listening, I just have my phone sitting right there, just updating as it goes along. So I'm just like, what's happening? And then I saw all the messages you were sending me. So I was like, what's happening? So,
man, you were saying before we hopped on that it's been a heck of a week. Anything in particular going on? Is you just like busy with?
Well, I mean, it was like mindset wise, things like that. Towards the end of the week, it got a lot better. I had a conversation with our team lead on some stuff, and things, some constructive criticism, things like that, making sure that I'm still, performing how I need to perform, and things like that. Not micromanaging by any means, but he's just making sure that things are performing and representing the team accordingly. So there was a little bit of stuff with that, because it's easy to get in your own head when you see people still constantly doing business and you feel like you're not doing the business and you're not doing anything right.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot when it comes to real estate in that regard, and or anyone who runs a business, honestly. But then, so I've been on top of just every contact, lead, whatever the case, client. I ended up putting in an offer on a commercial property. I don't like commercial properties. I don't like commercial real estate at all. I spent like 2.5, 3 hours just looking at this contract, and like I put in the information I knew where to put it in, but I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing on this. And
because the paperwork's entirely different, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a $800,000 property.
Nice.
And so we're going to probably know in a couple of days if our offer is either, in the top few offers, we have an opportunity to revise our offer, or if they're just going to accept our offer. And so, like I spent 3 hours last night putting that offer together, and then I ended up getting she has to sign the documents first, but I'm about to have another client on top of that. And then I may potentially and they're wanting to put an offer in on a property. And then I've got somebody else, depending on how these showings go tomorrow, he may want to put an offer in on one of those properties too.
You have what they refer to as a healthy pipeline, sir.
Well, I mean, it was all team provided, so definitely.
The teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, but no, it's over the weekend, worked on the mindset stuff a lot, and just trying to really maintain that positive, and just like that good mindset, especially going into the holidays, man. Like things get so stressful.
Yeah.
And, all that kind of stuff. So it's just things like that. But overall, I mean, the week was still good. Just trying to continue, like keep that momentum going, essentially, trying to still, carry that into the rest of the year, essentially, and then get ready for next year. So,
yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. Well, let me just ask you, what's your initial take after Tuesday's, we know who the next president's going to be. Right. President-elect at the moment. Technically not president as of recording this, but what's your initial take? What are your initial thoughts? Did you see this coming?
Well, real quick. So how was your week?
It was pretty good, dude. It was pretty good. So I mean, I guess like for the record, as of recording this, I currently work for Rumble. And so, you know, Rumble was the first platform to really support Donald Trump when he got booted off of YouTube. And Donald Trump Jr. has a podcast on Rumble. And,
We should interview him.
Dude, he's, from everything I've heard, people who talk to him on a frequent basis, he's just a normal dude. He's just a very down to earth guy. I've heard that a lot about a good handful of the Trump family. They just seem really like down to earth people from everyone I know who has personally talked with them. So it's kind of interesting. So this week, just with the election and everything, so much culturally, economically, the climate of alternative media in this country, a lot of it was kind of pivoting on, what came out of the elections on Tuesday. So with Trump, and we'll get into it here in a little bit with the numbers and all that, but just with basically a landslide of a victory, it's kind of smooth sailing at the office, just because there's always a target on your back when you're going up against the status quo, in that case, Google. But it's a little reassuring just to know that, like, hey, that pendulum in culture it's swinging back. It's a pendulum. So it goes either direction. So it's been a good week, at least at work. And then we're planning for those of you listening, we're going to film another episode after this. Spoiler alert. Abby and I, my wife, are getting ready to go to Las Vegas next weekend. So we're leaving Thursday of this week as of this episode releasing, and we'll be back the following Monday for a little honeymoon. And so it'll be a good time.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to know what to do with myself next Sunday night when we're not recording.
Well, if you want, you can go live on the Rumble channel if you want, and you could just hang out. You could, I don't know, you could stream some Destiny or something. I don't know.
Nah, people don't want to see that. But yeah, so back to your original question, what are my thoughts? I'm not gonna lie, like there was a point in time where, like, when you saw the numbers coming up, like I thought they were gonna do something. I'll be honest, and again, as we get into this, I want people to still know that we're not picking a side, but just going back through historically in the past 8 years or so, like with all the things that have happened, like it seems like there's been a lot more of this than, let's come together and actually make this thing work. So I thought that they were actually going to try to do something, like from all the things that we saw leading up to the actual election day, with all the, like even in Fort Worth and Tarrant County here in Texas, where they had some of the ballots that were misspelling names and not, reflecting correctly on the votes that people chose. And so
they had like some bomb threats too. I think I saw in like Philadelphia or something, there was people threatening acts of violence at certain polling places.
And so I was a little worried, like kind of like midway through it. But then as like I think he needed like, I don't know, like 23 electoral college votes left or whatever. I was like, I don't think there's any way, because all the other states that were voting blue or that weren't even counted yet, they weren't going to be counted in time before
mathematically they couldn't.
Yeah. And so what bugged me too is, like, after they announced that Trump pretty much was the president, like that he was going to be the president elect, Kamala Harris didn't even go and engage the people that she so-called was fighting for. All those people that were backing her and backing the Democratic Party and everything, and she was pushing for. She's like, we're going to fight. We're going to do this. And I mean, realistically, yeah, she's probably going to try to come back and run for 2028. I would assume.
You think so?
There was already talk about it in certain cases, like in future elections at least. But she didn't even come out there to address her people. Like all those people that supported her and voted for her, she just didn't. And it's like, you got to come out there and say something. Even I think every president who lost the election in the past like 4 or 5 elections still came out and was like, hey, we didn't get it this time. It's all good. But the thing is, I don't like it when they use the word like we're fighting here. It's like, why do we have to fight?
Mm.
Like, why do you have to, like, the emphasis of that word? It's like, why the parties should never be, yeah, they have differences of opinions and what they think should be involved in our country, but why do you have to fight about it? Like, why can't you just, again, come together and do what's best for the people instead of like you're just butting heads and just fighting all the time? But yeah, that's kind of like my base take on some of it.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. The one thing that kind of I think was like a telltale sign for just, I'll go ahead and say it, her character, or maybe not her, the character of those on her team, that they waited so long before they gave the concession speech. And what was really interesting, and I'll give it to her on this and her speechwriter, her concession speech, I don't know if you listened to it at all. It was Wednesday afternoon. It was at like, I think like 5 o'clock our time, maybe 4 o'clock. But it was, like you said, we got late into the night. It looked like mathematically Trump had, sealed the victory. And her campaign basically said, we're not going to make a statement tonight. She didn't address any supporters to, like, I guess, to use the term fight, keep up the fight sort of a thing. There was no public addressment, just go off into the darkness and wait for the next day. And then finally, when it's like, okay, you're at the point of no return, that's when the concession speech gets written and said out loud. I think from my perspective, I think pretty early on in the night, I think I realized, I was like, okay, I think it's his race to lose. Because at first, before some of the numbers really started coming in, I mean, we got some of the northeastern states first, just because of the way, they're ahead of us in time. Their polls close before the others, and the votes start getting tallied, especially some of the smaller states too. That's 100%. Really fast to count those. I was like, okay, so she got a little bit of a lead, and then he just came in. And it just seemed like once he got ahead of her in the tally, it was no slowing down from there. And then he just kept picking up swing state after swing state after swing state. I mean, once I saw, we knew Florida was going to be secured. We knew Texas was going to be secured. But once I started seeing, like, Georgia got picked up, the whole thing with Pennsylvania got picked up.
North
Carolina came in, West Virginia, some of these other ones that were...
Dude, I didn't expect West Virginia to go. I didn't at all, I'll be honest.
It's such a toss-up. Like, historically, it's a heavy Democratic state. But then even with, like, their senators, they've kind of... It's always a toss-up. That's why they call him a swing state, though. But the wild thing is, like, he picked up every swing state. I feel like that says something. And here, let me pull up.
I think overall, though, like, as much as people...
Did you see that? For those of you that are watching the video, I have a glass right here, small little glass with a drink in it, and I have, like, one of those cocktail straws. Well, I put my arm down like this, and it basically launched the straw high into the air. And for a half second, I was like, "What is happening?" Sorry.
I can watch that. No, yeah. But it's funny though, because you mentioned, like, it's Trump's race to lose, and I definitely think that was the case. And it definitely says a lot that when you have these swing states that come into play, and here's the thing. I was watching videos of people on the left side that were just freaking out, saying, "Oh, women's rights this." We don't know what's going to happen, first of all. Like, he just got elected. He's not even going to be taking office until January or February of next year.
Yeah.
We don't know what their overall... Like, their plans could change between now and then, And so the fact, though, that these swing states and that, like, and there are a lot of people too, like younger people who are like, I'm leaving the country, I'm doing this. Celebrities are saying the same thing. And honestly, it's like,
do it.
Hey, if you want to leave the country, I mean, This is a free country. Like, you're more than welcome to leave. I have people on my Facebook that have been posting stuff all week. I'm not going to comment on anything. I'm just kind of staying neutral to the whole thing. But it's like, y'all talk about caring for people and loving people, but then you get mad when someone votes differently than you, and you end friendships because somebody voted differently than you. If you end a friendship based on an election because you have different values and ideologies, we are not a united country, and you were never friends in the first place. I need to say that on here because it doesn't matter at this point. And so definitely a lot to take in on that. And I think people really just need to do better. Like, hey, let's communicate. Let's find out. Ask the questions to your friends. Why did you vote for this person? And if they can actually have that debate with you, and you can't seem to have that debate without calling them names or getting upset with them, that's the kind of the problem. People have lost the ability to want to actually have an educated debate on things.
It's hard to be educated. It's hard to have a solid opinion. It's hard, and I'm lazy. Man, I'm still finding pieces of this margarita I splashed around all over the place. This is less than ideal right now. But yeah, no, you're spot on, dude. I feel like any social media platform from, actually, I don't see it too much on X just because the way I have my feed set up. But like, man, I've seen people, Facebook, Instagram, other places, they are just losing their minds. And I'm like, guys, it's just, I don't know. He's been president before. It didn't go that bad. It wasn't
really
that bad. What do you? Oh, you smelling? Oh.
I was smelling the whiskey because I was like, I got coffee right here. This is pecan brown sugar bourbon. So I'm like,
you do you, man.
I'm like, would it taste okay? It's like I'm gonna kind of like,
yeah, it probably would. Just don't overdo it if you don't.
Oh no,
yeah.
Like I said,
that's some good notes because you said it was what, pecan or
pecan bourbon.
Yeah, that goes good in coffee. Instead of an Irish coffee, though, you just call it like an American coffee because it's got American bourbon.
Well, we're gonna find out. See, this is unscripted right here, y'all. This is Unscripted Company at its finest. Literally tonight. Literally tonight.
But yeah, man. If we look at this map real quick, though, I know everyone's already seen this map, but it's crazy. So, in order to get the majority of electoral college votes, you needed 270. Trump ended up getting 312 to Harris's 226. But wait, there's more. It's not even just the Electoral College vote that he gets. If we look at the popular vote, Trump got 74.8 million votes to Harris's 71.2. So this is the first time a Republican presidential nominee, now elect, has gotten the majority vote and the Electoral College vote since George W. Bush. Now, albeit it was only Trump in between that, but it's still kind of a big deal that there's no excuse here. You can't make the argument of, oh yeah, he won the Electoral College, but he didn't win the popular vote, because if I remember correctly, that was the scenario with him when he ran against Hillary Clinton. Was Hillary Clinton technically got the popular vote, but because of the way the system works, he got the Electoral College vote, which in this case, landslide.
Right. So the popular vote with those numbers right there, like those are like the people, right? Like those are the people's votes. Okay.
That's like if you vote, you're a one tally in that overall vote.
Okay. So let's we have 300 million people in the country, right?
Correct. Yes, like 320, 360 million.
That means less than 50% of our country did not vote. Let that sink in for a bit.
Well, okay, so we have 334.9 million people as of 2023, but then you have to consider how many of those people are voting age.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And then of those that are voting age, how many registered to vote? Because there's a lot of people who don't register.
I was like, Dana wasn't registered to vote.
Aren't in a situation where they're legally able to register to vote. So you have like all these scenarios where it's like, although you bring up a good point though, because one thing I was going to bring up, and this is kind of relevant to this, let me jump ahead real quick. One thing that a lot of people realized this election, when they looked at the total number of people that actually voted.
I saw that.
Yeah. So for those of you that are in audio land, this is a bar graph of the U.S. presidential election popular vote counts in millions for 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024. And if we look at, it's split up by Republican vote and Democratic vote, and you can see just the huge spike in 2020 of basically double the number of people turned out to vote in the 2020 election than they did the 2024 or the 2016, the two elections that sandwich it.
I'm just saying, all those conspiracy theories out there with all those, that 80 million votes that just came out of nowhere. That's
the whole thing. Those votes that popped up at like 2:00 in the morning, those mail-in votes that apparently
we forgot about these. And some of them were, don't know if it was proven or not, but some of them were apparently dead people.
There's been scenarios where, like, if you Google it, you'll find there's scenarios every year where like people that have been deceased turn out and some voter tallies here and there. It's some of it's hyperbole, some of it's reality. So it's
Right.
like, but it makes you wonder.
So my thing, and we'll actually get into this like on one of your next bullet points. And like we'll kind of like later on we'll kind of get into like what Trump's plans are kind of going into 2025, but you also had the poly market map and the election turnout. I want to talk about that before we get, because there's something I want to ask you about Elon Musk first.
Yes.
So
One thing that was very interesting, and this has happened, I think the last 3, if not 4 presidential elections is,
oh,
yeah, you have the polls where, people are surveyed based on who they think they're going to who they're going to vote for. There's these different companies and these different people that do these different polling structures, and they've just blatantly got it wrong the last couple of elections. Like, the easiest one is if you look at the 2016 election, every poll was saying Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide, and then Trump came in and just absolutely like won that thing, and that threw people through a loop. That happening in this time where it was showing Kamala Harris as the favorite, and then all these states, people came out and they voted for Trump. What's interesting though is if you look at the maps created by companies like Polymarket, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Polymarket, Polymarket is basically a gambling website where you can bet on different scenarios in the real world. So the same way you would bet on a sports game, like, are you gonna bet your money for or against the Dallas Cowboys? And this year you want to vote against every single game.
yeah.
But in this case, you can vote for who do you think is going to, be president? You think Trump or Harris? And what's wild is if you just follow the money of where people were actually betting real dollars, that map is almost exactly perfect to what the actual results were of the 2024 election.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, because I even told you about this the night of the election, when we were still kind of waiting for some of the states to start counting, like the western states. I already knew California, Oregon, and Washington were all going to be blue. I was like, they're going to be blue. I'll be honest, I was a little surprised by what was that? Indiana? Is that Indiana? That's right below Michigan.
Yeah, Indiana.
I was a little surprised by that because, like, I mean, I know a lot of people up there in that area, and quite a few of them that, but I guess the majority voted
and it's
blue.
right next to Illinois with Chicago. That's a huge Democratic stronghold area.
And then New Mexico, I mean, I was kind of surprised a little bit too, because like they're very pro-gun, like they're almost the same as Texas in their gun laws. And so I was a little surprised by New Mexico, but seeing as it borders with Colorado and they are legal in their cannabis industries and stuff like that, which to me, like, you have a legal, like, you can carry firearms with a permit, but then you also are, you have cannabis legalized. So it's like, okay, like you got to choose one or the other, because that can end up real bad in certain situations. But again, some like all the eastern states, like I knew all those were going to be blue right off the bat, because I'm pretty sure most years they are actually typically blue. But I was also looking at that that picture that's right there. Was it Rex Umber or whatever?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Oh man.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is interesting though, because going forward, there's just going to be more and more of these services where you can put real money down on who you think is going to win. And I'm curious to see, like, as the years go on, because it's going to be another 4 years before we have another presidential election, is
right.
How accurate do these become going forward, and is this the new model for how we actually forecast the results of an election? Because dude, some of these pollsters are just blatantly bad at their job. I didn't have this tweet prepped, but there was even a scenario where one of the people who is like a pollster, one of them that like designs and reports on like forecasting the election, they were on like they're being interviewed, and they had the data in front of them where it had the letter D plus a number and then / and had an R plus a number, right? So you have like the Democrat and the Republican numbers. And she was confused because she didn't understand what the D and the R stood for. But I'm like, you're literally like, this is your job. It is your job to design, send out, report on, and
Hmm.
analyze polling like this. And so it's just like wild where it's like, okay, these people, it's just one of those moments, I think, whenever the wall is broken down and you really realize just how, I don't want to say ignorant, but just,
Yeah.
I don't know, the facade isn't there anymore. Like you see it for what it is. You're like, okay, like we can't trust you with forecasting how the nation is going to vote. But one thing, like, so I'm talking about Polymarket with this, but one thing that also popped up kind of last minute in the race was Robinhood even came
Hmm.
out with you could purchase and bet on derivatives for
Yeah.
the election. So it's like Robinhood is an app that's extremely accessible to the American population, and so I feel like we're going to start to see more and more of this. That's just going to be like next election season. Are we going to see DraftKings? Are we going to see some of these like betting platforms really lean heavy into this?
See, and I'll be honest with you, I'm actually glad that you kind of brought that up. So one of my biggest things is, with the bet, like I don't think it should be it shouldn't be a game. Let me put it like that. Like this is, this shouldn't be something for people to find a way to try to make some quick money off of. Like this is literally like the future of our country, and a lot of people may not care, but if if we have a healthy country, we're going to be here for like another 40 years, 40 or 50 years, and so I don't want to end up in a country where it's just like, you know, it's almost like sports now. It's like people control what's going to happen in sports games. Like I'm not going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs here, but come on now, like really, every time they go into overtime, they win in overtime every single time, and you can see the looks on all the other players' faces, like, oh god, they won the coin toss. Well, they're going to win because we already know that they're going to score first. And kind of brings me to like my next point. Um, Celebrities and the election. I do not think you should be able to use your status as a celebrity, singer. I do not care. I don't care how big of a platform you have. I don't care if every single person on the face of this planet knows who you are. You should not be allowed to use your influence and how you relate, I guess, because let's be honest, no one really relates to the celebrities in a lot of cases because, unless those celebrities were actually being honest about things that they were dealing with and going through. I do not think celebrities should use their power and authority and their standing in our country to influence any election in any type of way. Now, there are
Hmm.
some people like Dave Ramsey, and this kind of goes back into like the debate thing. So, like people like Dave Ramsey, trying to think of who else. There was like a couple other actors
Well,
that
that's
mentioned.
that's something I was going to ask you is at what point does someone become a celebrity? Because I could make the argument that the vast majority of the celebrities that came out in support of the Harris campaign didn't really help it that much. When you look at some of the people that the Trump campaign interacted with, Elon Musk, Joe
Right.
Rogan, Theo Vaughn, it helped them, I think, a lot. But at what point do you become like a celebrity versus just a private citizen?
And I'll tell you why it worked for Trump and not for Harris, or at least what I think is the reasoning why. So, for example, uh, the Avengers cast from the movies, the
Yeah.
Avengers, they all came like on a video chat together, and they were all endorsing Kamala and
We had
this and
Dave
that.
Batista doing multiple videos. He had like an SNL skit
Yeah,
on it. And
all that kind
yeah.
of stuff, and they were all endorsing Harris. That's all they did. They did like the one video. That was it. They didn't go out publicizing everything, doing all that kind of stuff. Whereas Joe Rogan has an insane amount of followers. He doesn't present himself in a manner like a lot of celebrities do. He seems like a well reserved person. He's like, yeah, I kickbox, I have a podcast, I do
He
this
remains
and this.
humble.
He remains humble. He had Trump on his podcast, just like Theo Vaughn did. He had Trump on his podcast, and they just talked. And he talked about what problems our country is facing right now and what the world is facing right now. Harris never did that. When Harris was asked to be on Joe Rogan's podcast, she sent him like a list of stipulations that he had to go by in a way, I feel like, to make her look better
Yeah.
because of how good Trump looked on his podcast. He wasn't going to go for that. He's like, no, I'm going to treat it the exact same as the podcast with Trump. Like, you want it to be fair, so you got to treat it the same way. But then you have other celebrities.
And let's be honest, the same way just means an uncut conversation with nobody else in the room. 100%. That's all that is.
And then you have people like Dave Ramsey, and I watched his like 10-minute video, but he publicly came out and he's like, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't endorsing him, but he's like, I'm voting for him. And he could actually give you reasons why he was voting for them. Those other celebrities, if what you will, if you want to call them that, they did the one video, and a lot of them, and even just like today's people, like with Charlie Kirk and stuff like that. I don't know if you saw the video of Charlie Kirk. As soon as he heard that Trump won, dude broke down in tears. Like,
really?
He was so happy that Trump won because of all of his hard work and the college visits and the campuses and the debating, everything. Dude broke down in tears. Charlie Kirk is not a celebrity, but what he did made a huge impact in Trump winning the election, I feel.
I'm willing to bet you can make the argument that Charlie Kirk is like an internet celebrity. Because, like, let's see here. How many?
He's got a book or two out.
He has 4 million followers on X. 4 million people.
But you have to think, though, how many people does he go to? How many colleges does he go to on a weekly basis? How many?
Oh, I don't know.
Talking, like, I don't watch like all of his stuff, but like I'll come across like little 10-minute videos on YouTube and I'll watch them.
Well, I mean, like, he's the CEO of Turning Point USA, so I mean, he's always he's out there doing stuff.
And but when he was at the colleges debating people, he would ask young people, hey, why, just straight up asking them, like, why are you voting for Kamala? And they would say why they're voting. And then he would ask them, well, she didn't really do this, or she didn't really do this. On the other hand, Trump, these are the things that he did do during his first term. And people would just get so upset. And a lot of people would say, I'm only voting for Kamala because my friends are. No, like, don't feel like just so you can belong, you vote for the same person. Like, again, educate yourself and vote for who you think is going to do best. But I think the whole celebrity thing, I don't want the election. And here's the thing. Compared to 300 million people in this country, we are just two random people who, honestly, a lot of people probably could not care about our opinions on things. And I'm fine with that. But I do not want the election to turn into a celebrity showdown kind of thing with, who's got the most followers and who's got the most likes on TikTok and who's this and who's that. Like, there were some talks about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Like, he was on a talk show and they asked him about running in 2028. He didn't really say anything to it, though. He didn't really give like a definitive answer. He just kind of skirted around the question, like, a lot of people tend to when they don't want to give a straight up answer. But I don't want it to turn into like a celebrity thing. We do not need a celebrity in office. And I saw an article, I think it was an article, that talked about that. It was on Twitter. It's like, we don't need a celebrity in office. We need someone who has, for example, fought in wars, gone to other countries, seen what it's like out there in the world, and has that background of coming back home and has actually understood what it's like living how we live, to go into office and actually make the changes. Someone who's actually studied and, maybe gotten the degrees of knowing what's going on and what's happening and how to understand the status quo of our country and put them in office. We don't need celebrities in office who, have millions of dollars, billions of dollars that can just push their own agendas. We need someone who is a straight, and I know Trump is a millionaire. I think he's a billionaire, actually.
And a celebrity.
And he's a celebrity, but he doesn't act like it. If you've noticed on all of his, like, when he's in public talking to people, like, and it could be just because he was trying to win the election again. He didn't act like a celebrity. He doesn't push himself in that direction and that agenda, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think you also have an issue to think about is, like, I totally get what you're saying. You want the ideal, you want a statesman. You want someone who's fought for the country, wants to lead the country for the betterment of the country. And that sounds good. I think the problem is, if you want someone that's like well-educated and who's really digging into the numbers and is really digging into the the why behind it, I think those people are smart enough to know they don't want that job. Because I don't think anyone wants, like, let me make sure I phrase this the right way, because there are definitely people that want to be president. But the people that would want to be president for the right reasons, those people don't want to be president because they know how convoluted it is. They know how unnecessary a lot of it is. Like right now, I could probably name off like 10 highly qualified CEOs of Fortune 500 companies that would be excellent at being the president of the United States. Probably some of the best presidents we've ever had because they're charismatic, well thought out, well read. They've started and or sold multiple different hundreds of millions, billion-dollar companies, things like that. But they're smart enough to know that that's not a fun job and they don't want that job. So it's a tricky game of like, how do you find someone who could be authentically good enough, but still actually want to do the job at the end of the day? I think it's extremely difficult to find that person.
I'll be honest. If someone asked me, "Hey, you want to be president?" Like they just try to ask me, I'd be like, maybe. Let's see. I mean, to act like, and the thing is like, I know I'm far from that. I'm like, there's a one point in time where I considered running for like a city official here in Denton. Like,
well, you can still do that, but dude, being president though, man, you're dealing with things that like you and I aren't even aware of right now. Yeah, there's things that you have to worry about that they don't even concern the president with because it's so out there above him.
Do you think that's a problem though?
Yes, I think that is a problem. I think a lot of people refer to it as like the deep state, the bureaucratic state. That's definitely a problem because you have people, because the presidential term is only 4 years, 8 years if you do back-to-back terms and you're lucky. But there's the rank and file of the government that is there day in and day out before and after these presidents come and go. I think there's a lot that are intelligence agencies, the agencies that have 3 letters in their name. I think a lot of those do things that the president will never know about. And we have some factual evidence that is true.
Right.
It might have been the reason JFK got whacked. Who knows? But there's a lot that goes on that I don't think the president will ever be aware of. Like, case in point, think about these last 4 years under Joe Biden. Do you think he was the one really making all the decisions?
No.
Then who was making the decisions?
Barack Obama in his basement.
I don't even think it was him. I think it was the bureaucratic machine that was
but
there
that's the
before
thing, though.
him.
It's like, why? And this definitely probably goes way above, probably honestly, both of our heads in asking this question. But why doesn't Trump abolish that?
Like, I think we may see that the second go around, some more disruption, because I think kind of no fault to his own. When he got in there the first time, no one can really realize what it's like. Like when you get in there day one and they debrief you for the first time on things that you would never know about unless you were the elected president at that time. I think he initially, for the first term, he surrounded himself with other members of the rank and file, which is why he also had to fire so many people. Because like, I don't know if you remember in the news, like they still talk about to this day, like how many people he fired in his administration that first go around.
Yeah. And now he handpicked everyone.
Yes. And I think that'll make a huge difference the second go around. Cause like he has his squad. He knows, and it'll be interesting to see how many of those people that he campaigned with continue to stick around.
Right.
Like I'm curious to see what ends up happening with they're calling it the DOGE. It's the Department of Government Efficiency. And it's supposed to be, the whole idea is Elon Musk is going to run this department to make the government more efficient fiscally and operationally. But then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, but the guy's still running SpaceX. He's still running Tesla. He still is running X. Like
he's going to have people backing him.
Yeah.
On that.
You just can't
Elon Musk, if you're listening, hey.
No, I can't, dude. No,
I've heard things about how his employees and things like that. So.
It's very cutthroat, and I respect it, but it's a lot. But I know like the second go around too, he's gonna have like RFK Jr. in there with him,
right?
Vivek Ramaswamy backing him up.
He's got so many people backing him this time that
yeah,
people who aren't even in big office, like you said, Charlie Kirk, Steven Crowder, people like that who are actually on the ground doing the groundwork, like in the cities and stuff like that, and in the colleges. Like,
no, not even that. I'm talking about people that are like going to be in his cabinet, the people that will, like Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, who's going to be like. He also gets to like appoint like who's going to be leading the CIA, things like that.
Yeah,
where it's. The first go around, I don't think he really knew what all was going on, to be honest with you.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think too, he was using these last 4 years, like while Biden was in office and he was fighting all of his lawsuits and stuff like that. He was preparing for this moment. Like he knew, he was like, this is it. Like we got to push everything as much as we can. And even through all his money, not having his money, still getting the funding, still doing everything that he did, and surviving not one, but 3 potential assassination attempts, for sure one. He knew, he was like, we got to do this. Like, this has got to happen. And now he's done it. He's officially, again, our 47th president. And these next 90 days are going to be crucial as far as like how everything's transferred over and how everything's done, so.
Yeah. Speaking of transfers, one thing that actually I saw today that let me pull this up real quick and share my screen. Talking about transitions of power here. I'm going to play this video. This is from CNN.
Is looking for. That is my question. I'll start with you.
Joe Biden has been a phenomenal president. He's lived up to so many of the promises he's made. There's one promise left that he could fulfill. Being a transitional figure. He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days, make Kamala Harris the president of the United States.
Whoa.
It would absolve her from being able to from having to oversee the January 6th transition, right, of her own defeat. And it would make sure that it would dominate the news at a point where Democrats have to learn drama and transparency and doing things that the public want to see is the time. This is the moment for us to change the entire perspective of how Democrats operate.
This has now jumped from an internet meme to a Sunday morning show.
Jamal's out here right now for a
Congratulations.
season of House of Cards.
I thought you were going to say, what about the Supreme Court? That's also out there.
Well, the Supreme Court might happen. I don't know if it will, but.
So now there's this idea, and for those of you listening who didn't see this is like on CNN, morning coverage, former staffer for, I think, Kamala Harris, if I'm correct. I said it on here. He's a CNN political commentator now, Jamal Simmons, but throwing out the idea of should Joe Biden vacate the office of the president within the next 30 days so that way Harris becomes president and she and her team will oversee the transition to the Trump administration.
I don't think that should happen. Not because
that's crazy.
Not because it's her, but because I don't like. Here's the thing: I didn't really trust Joe Biden, because how old he was and things that were going on and stuff like that. That seemed like way above what he was capable of possibly doing.
Yeah,
I definitely don't trust her, and I might be biased in saying that. And there are some Democratic Party people that I have difference of opinion of, like some of them I don't like, some of them I'm like, okay, I get it, I understand. I don't trust her, and if she was, all she needs is 30 days in office to make that transition like the worst thing ever. Like, I don't trust it.
Here's why you shouldn't trust it. So I saw this post on X the other day, and it says, "Wonder who is painting a better picture for America." And it shows campaign spending metrics here. It says Trump raised $381 million. Trump spent $345 million. So spent almost all of what he raised. And out of all that money, only $10.4 million was spent on staff. Now, on the other side of the coin there, you have Kamala raised $1 billion with a B, spent $1.3 billion, so spent more than raised. And of that spent, $582 million of it was on staff. And so I was like, okay, hold up. couple things I'm learning here, and then we'll dive even deeper because I was like, let me fact check this first of all. But so just to boil this down, so Trump at least spent almost, but less than what he raised. That makes sense. And it wasn't that wide of a margin. And only spent $10.4 million on staff. Meanwhile, Harris raised $1 billion, spent over $1 billion, and spent $500 million on staff. That is absurd, first of all. So then I was like, okay, you know what? Let me dig a little deeper. Let me see if these numbers are real, first of all. And I looked around and I found from US News, yeah, this is basically what happened. So if we look at the spending numbers for the 2024 election cycle, Harris's campaign spent $881 million. Trump's campaign spent $356 million. So I'm just sitting here thinking, which one's going to be more efficient in their spending of finances and budgets when they hit office? And then if we scroll down here, there's also a graph of what like super PACs and nonprofits spent on each campaign. So the dark blue here is for Democrats, light blue is against Republicans, red is for Republicans, and the light red is against Democrats. And the largest one by far is for Democrats, with second place being against Republicans. So much money was spent in this. And if we look at what was spent in just for Democrats, this is outside of the Harris campaign, $741 million. Against Republicans, $618 million. For Republicans, only $388 million. And against Democrats, $227 million. And then it has it broken down by state, things like that, different senators and what they spent. But it's just, there are just, even though they spent all this money, and part of it also, I couldn't figure out a formal answer to this, is Harris's campaign spent oodles of money. How much of that was going towards celebrity endorsements, though? That I don't know. And I imagine celebrities would like a pretty penny in order to endorse anybody. But it's just like, so much money got spent this election cycle. It's crazy. Did you hear, and this kind of went viral a little bit. So Theo Von, who's a stand-up comedian, went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Rogan was talking about how apparently Elon Musk knew Trump won the election before it was actually called, because Elon created this app, apparently, that could basically tabulate what all the different news outlets and et cetera, who knows what it was actually doing.
Right.
And he actually was able to call the election before like anyone else called it.
So he used AI to do so?
Maybe. I don't know.
It was interesting because at the beginning of the night, no one knew what was going to happen. We were watching the first results roll in, and there's like this weird thing. And then Trump gets way ahead, but you don't want to like get too hopeful. By 100 points. That seems like a lot.
Yeah, and you're like, what is it? And some channels are like, and then every channel's kind of different.
Yeah, they had different numbers. I was getting a different number off my Apple News update than I was getting off of CNN, and then I was texting people like Tulsi and
That's another
Vance.
thing.
I was getting a different apparently, Elon created an app, and he knew who won 4 hours before the results. So as the results were coming in, 4 hours before they called it, Dana White told me Elon was like, "I'm leaving. It's over. Donald won." He just fucking somehow or another.
I'm gonna go back into my pod and evaporate.
I don't know what he's getting, where he's pulling his data from, but he had like the most accurate data in terms of the rural states hadn't put the results in yet, but yet Trump was ahead in these states. Kamala's never going to win those states, so tabulated that and like put it all together. I don't know how he did it. But
Yeah.
So I haven't even talked to Elon about this. I don't know like the Dana translation, but Dana said he had an app and he was like showing him. He's like, "It's over."
And
He fucking left. Dude just left.
it's over. John Jones won.
So it's just, what an election cycle.
I don't understand how the app could have picked up on the swing states, though. Like,
I don't know.
because you had like 4 or 5. So it's like, how did you?
It may have been like some statistical probability of like, if these counties won, and the odds of these other counties winning, and then
Okay.
rural versus urban versus historical trends. Like, I don't know, dude.
So before we continue on, like,
Yeah.
there's a couple things I kind of want to like touch on before we finish up on this one. But one question for you, since we've been talking about Elon Musk, do you think he'll ever run for president?
No, I don't think he can because he was born in South Africa, right? So he legally can't become president.
Even if he like,
You got to be a natural born citizen.
I mean, was Barack Obama a natural born citizen, and he still
That's a
ran for president?
great question,
I mean,
sir.
I'm just saying.
Hey, I'm sure the great state of
gonna have
Hawaii would love to correct you on that
I'm
one.
gonna have the CIA knocking on my door tomorrow.
But
probably.
that's why that was a whole debate. Was he a citizen? It was a big gray area.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It was, and at the end of the day, I mean, his election time came and passed. But now, my question though, before we finish up on this and go to the next part, or I suppose I probably could say this question for the end of it as like a cliffhanger kind of thing. But some of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on is the Democrats are still blaming Joe Biden in the post-election fallout. So this article came out on November 8th at 9:32. And it says Democrats are increasingly blaming President Joe Biden for Vice President Kamala Harris losing this year's presidential election to President-elect Donald Trump. Trump achieved a surprisingly decisive victory over Harris on Tuesday, with the 3-time presidential candidate winning the Electoral College for the second time and appearing likely to win the national popular vote for the first time. And although millions of votes have yet to be counted, because technically the election ended, but they were still counting votes later in the week. The scale of Trump's win was a shock to the system for Democrats, many of whom have suggested that Biden running for re-election before making the decision to drop out of the race in July may have doomed their hopes of retaining the White House. They had it all planned out. They wanted him to drop out of the race, and they told him to drop out of the race. Now they're blaming him for dropping out of the race and not running. So
yeah, because they were backing the money truck up to him even before that first debate performance. Like, he was their guy, and then they were like, "Whoo, maybe he can't be our guy."
Biden did not explicitly pledge that he would not seek re-election during his 2020 campaign, although he did hint at the possibility by describing himself as a transition candidate and a bridge to a younger generation of Democratic leaders. Biden resisted the calls to drop out for weeks, saying that he was sure he was the best person to beat Donald Trump in 2024 before eventually changing his mind. Some political scientists have argued that he might have been right. We'll never know at the end of the day. So there's that.
Well, what's interesting, if the argument was for him to be a transition, the transition went horribly because this clip went viral. And let me share this real quick. This is another clip from CNN talking about the performance of the Harris campaign versus Biden's campaign, 2020 versus 2024.
Are there any places that the vice president is overperforming Joe Biden in 2020? So we could show you that as well. Harris overperforming 2020.
Holy smokes.
There you go. So let this go away and see if there's anything on the east side there.
Literally nothing?
Literally nothing.
Literally not one county?
By 3% or more.
So
I remember that. I saw that.
According to CNN, Harris did not perform better than Biden anywhere in the country.
Nope.
Which is bananas.
It just really makes you think as a whole that did she really have the support that people were saying she did, or were all those people that were claiming they were going to vote for Kamala, did a good bit of them actually turn and vote for Trump in the end? You know, I mean, yeah, you can see the numbers from the popular vote, obviously, but did a number of them actually change in the end to vote?
I don't know if it changed as much as I think the average American really just showed up to vote. I think the average American who's not, active on social media all day because they're working all day,
trying to make money, trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, they're not at these celebrity performances. They don't really care about all the celebrities out there. I think those people showed up to vote. I think that's what really tipped the scales. Because one thing I always have to remind people is, like, when you're on social media all day, you can think the public opinion is going one way or the other, but you have to remember Like, not everybody's on social media. And then you also have the thing of some people are on social media, but they're not posting on social media. It's like it's a bias. You know, everyone's either super one way or super the other, or just completely silent.
Right.
And I think the completely silent part came out to vote.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Couple things. So this is kind of like a look. Donald Trump has sweeping plans for his second administration. Here's what he's proposed.
Yeah. What you got?
So what to know about the 2024 election? First off, turning promises into policy. Americans frustrated over high prices await the change Trump has promised. Again, like you said, the average American, the working class, the middle class, we're tired of not being able to just afford to live, honestly, or living paycheck to paycheck per se. Proponents of school choice will have an ally in the White House once again, but private schooling suffered high-profile defeats in several states. Balance of power. Republicans won control of the U.S. Senate, giving the GOP a major power center in Washington. Control over the House of Representatives is still up for grabs. I did hear, though, after this article, which was wrote on the 7th, that Republicans took the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So for
it's
the
a
first
majority.
time, for the first time in 4 years,
In a
I
while.
think. Yeah. AP Votecast, democracy was a motivating factor for both Harris and Trump voters, but for very different reasons. So a couple of the things that he's proposed: immigration. So he's already made a trip to the border and has already openly stated, we're about to do a mass deportation. Get ready because we're coming for you, kind of thing. Like, so they're going to start going through everyone, making sure that everyone's, a citizen. And if you're not a citizen, you don't have all your documentation to back it up, then you got to go back home, and if you want to come back over here, then just do it the right way. And so he's probably going to reemphasize on building the wall again. Something like that's probably going to come up. But he said he pitched ideological screening for would-be entrants, ending birthright citizenship, which almost certainly would require constitutional change. So it's like, if you're born over here, then it's still it's going to be a gray area, but they're going to figure something's probably going to change with that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because that's a huge change. I don't know where I sit on that, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, he said it would pretty much require a constitutional change, and said he'd reinstitute first-term policies such as Remain in Mexico, limiting immigrants on public health grounds, and severely limiting or banning entrance from certain majority Muslim nations. Abortion, which was definitely a big one that a lot of people were very upset about when he won, because Roe versus Wade, all of that, pretty much giving power back to the states to make their own decisions, doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing away with abortions.
It's just a state issue.
It's just going to be a state issue. So you can't get mad at one guy. If you want the change in your state, then you have to make that stand. And I hate saying that, because don't get me wrong, I am a pro-life person, but I still also too believe that a woman has the free will to do whatever she wants with her body at the end of the day, and so it's, you can definitely still have both opinions in both aspects. It says, it says Trump said last month on his social media platform, Truth Social, that he would veto a federal abortion ban if legislation reached his desk. A statement he made only after avoiding a firm position in his September debate against the Democratic nominee Kamala Harris. So he actively came out and said, I'm not going to vote for that if it comes across the desk. I don't want to take that from people. Let the states handle that.
Yeah.
But it's unclear if his administration would aggressively defend against legal challenges seeking to restrict access to abortion pills, including mifepristone, as the Biden administration has. Anti-abortion advocates continue to wage legal battles over the Food and Drug Administration's approval of the drug, as well as the agency's relaxed prescribing restrictions. Trump is also unlikely to enforce Biden's guidance that hospitals must provide abortions for women who are in medical emergencies, even in states with bans. And so that means, he probably won't enforce that, but again, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Next one is taxes, which was definitely a big one for the working class, because Harris wanted to impose a 28% tax. But now he wants to lower the corporate income tax rate to 15% from the current 21%. That also involves rolling back Democratic President Joe Biden's income tax hikes on the wealthiest Americans and scrapping Inflation Reduction Act levies that finance energy measures intended to combat climate change. So hopefully overall is going to be a better change just for everyone as far as taxes go. Everyone not having to pay as much, and so hopefully that will definitely benefit benefit a lot. And they talked about new proposals aimed at the working and middle class Americans, exempting earned tips, Social Security wages, and overtime wages from income tax. It's noteworthy, however, that his proposal on tips, depending on how Congress might write it, could give a backdoor tax break on top wage earners by allowing them to reclassify some of their pay as tip income.
That would be wild.
Yeah. A prospect at its most extreme could see a hedge fund managers or top flight attorneys taking advantage of a policy that Trump frames as being designed.
Dude, I didn't think about this. The whole tip thing totally makes sense to me for like hourly workers, service industry, etc. I didn't think about the tip thing when it comes to like the creator economy. So like right now, like on a X profile or like a Venmo kind of thing, like
or Twitch.
Yeah, no, that's a good point for all this for streamers and stuff. Like those donations, those sponsorships, those whatever term you want to use for it, those can be classified as tips in a weird way and not have to be taxed. Oh, that's so lucrative. Right now, I'd just like to take a moment for the audience out there. If you're watching, hi, I'm here. Listen, at some point in time, we're going to have a little donate button and just help us out. We're going to test out this taxation policy once it gets rolled out. We want you to really help test out this system. So keep that in mind. We'll check in later on, but Riley, you continue.
No, you're good. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting because even as someone like myself, I make all of my money on commissions.
That's true.
So it's,
ooh,
I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if that could be like,
because I have my LLC now too. So it's, I don't know. Definitely have to ask my CPA about that.
Can you tip yourself?
Right. Tariffs and trades. So that was a big thing too with foreign countries buying land, buying all kinds of things over here.
Yeah.
There's already been a lot of talk about that. He mentioned higher percentages. He promises to reinstitute an August 2020 executive order requiring that the federal government buy essential medications from only U.S. companies.
I'm down for that one, dude. We saw through that during COVID. Was like,
yeah, dude.
We're like, how much of our stuff is coming from China? Dear Lord.
And so let me finish this, and then we'll kind of wrap up on this episode with some final thoughts and stuff. The DEI, LGBTQ, and civil rights. He's called for rolling back societal emphasis on diversity and for legal protections for those citizens. Trump has called for ending diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in government institutions using federal funding as leverage. On transgender rights, Trump promises generally to end boys and girls sports, a practice he insists without evidence is widespread. It's not widespread, but you see it. It happens. But his policies go well beyond standard applause lines from his rally speeches. Among other ideas, Trump would roll back the Biden administration policy on extending Title 11 civil rights, I believe. It's either 9 or 11. I don't know the Roman numeral for it. Protections to transgender students, and he would ask Congress to require that only 2 genders can be recognized at birth.
Interesting.
So see what happens with that. Again, now that's something I stand firm on. You have a male, you have a female. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you got. And then regulation, federal bureaucracy, and presidential power. Reduce the role of federal bureaucrats and regulations. That's what you talked about earlier, the deep state and stuff like that. Trump frames all regulatory cuts as an economic magic wand. He pledges precipitous drops in U.S. household utility bills by removing obstacles to fossil fuel productions. So he did talk about opening up the pipeline again.
Drill, baby, drill. Basically.
Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah.
So he talked about that. He also claims that presidents have exclusive power to control federal spending even after Congress has appropriated money. Trump argues that lawmakers' budget actions set a ceiling on spending but not a floor, meaning the president's constitutional duty to faithfully execute the laws includes discretion on whether to spend the money. So it could set up a court battle with Congress in that. As far as education, Federal Department of Education would be targeted for elimination in a second Trump administration. That does not mean that Trump wants Washington out of classrooms. He still proposes, among other maneuvers, using federal funding as leverage to pressure K through 12 school systems to abolish tenure and adopt merit pay for teachers and to scrap diversity programs at all levels of education. He calls for pulling federal funding for any schools or programs pushing critical race theory, gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. I agree with that. I'll be honest. I don't think, unless you're in high school and you're cognizant enough to really make your own decisions as you're growing up, maybe even still talking to your parents about it, you should not be pushing things like this on children who are impressionable and are still being molded into young adults. I don't know your take on that.
I think even adults are very impressionable, so I don't know what my...
They can be. I mean, especially, you see it on social media.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you. It's just, I don't know at what point you can even bring that up.
I think at least,
I think it does more harm than good.
Yeah. You know? I think, the gender ideology, because there are some teachers that kind of push some things on students like that without the parents knowing about it.
We were the last generation that didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah. So, and then in higher education, Trump proposes taking over accreditation processes for colleges, a move he describes as a secret weapon against the Marxist maniacs and lunatics. He says control higher education, kind of talking about, how a lot of the schools are just full of again, I don't like using the term, but the wokeism and stuff like that. Talking about that kind of stuff. Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, and then the Affordable Care Act and health care. And the list goes on and on. Workers' rights, things like that. He's got a lot planned for 2025 as soon as he gets in office. And the thing is, he's already acting on a lot of this stuff.
Dude, I already saw people already can see these headlines of leader of Hamas said they want to back down.
Dude,
there's already talks with Zelensky in Ukraine, and so it's it is crazy. It is crazy. Now the question will be how much of the talk becomes reality. He won't be able to use the excuse of being roadblocked by Congress and the Senate because he'll have the majority. Yeah. So if they're able to move, they can move fast and without friction. Theoretically, January is still a lifetime away, apparently, but who knows?
So let me ask you one question, then, and we'll wrap this one up.
Yeah.
Let's say Trump makes it all 4 years, you know, and I don't see him getting impeached because now that they have control of the House and the Senate, which I think they do their elections every 2 years. So if they can maintain that control for all 4 of those years, Trump will finish out his last, presidency. If you had to make a prediction now, what do you predict for 2028?
Oh, who's running? I think on the Republican side, I think you'll have JD Vance step up. It'll be Vance, and I don't know. I could see for some reason Vivek Ramaswamy or Tulsi Gabbard potentially. I think if I had it my way, it would be JD Vance and then Tulsi Gabbard as VP. I think that would be ideal. Ramaswamy would be good too, but I don't see him going back into national politics. I know there's rumors of him potentially running for governor of Ohio, I believe.
He has potential though for national politics.
He has strong potential, but I don't know. He's always been in private equity and in the world of business, so I don't know if he'll want to step back out and do the role. He'll still be publicly influential, I think.
Right.
So I think I guess if I had it my way, it'd be JD Vance and probably Tulsi Gabbard. The VP pick for me is totally up in the air because 4 years from now, I'm sure someone else will make a name for themselves, but I think JD will step up. On the Democratic side, I don't know. There's such a gap and void. Harris is done. I don't see Harris ever coming back. Tim Walz is done. He's going to go off into obscurity. You'll never hear about him again. At least
the governor of California is really the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
I could see him. I was surprised he wasn't tapped to do it this go around. I thought they were going to have, when Biden stepped down, I thought they were going to have Gavin Newsom, governor of California, step up. I think they're kind of, but there's been rumors at the same time that he doesn't vibe well with what's going on with the status quo of the Democratic Party. He was, and then they had a falling out. I don't know what's happening there, but I think he fits the bill for who they would need to win an election. Governor of one of the most populous states, young in comparison. I hate to say it, he's male. I feel like he fits the bill. But I don't know. 4 years is a long way away. There could be so many more power players that pop up.
Someone that we never even heard of just comes out of nowhere, and they're just like, oh my God, check out this person.
Because everyone else that's popular, they're popular for all the wrong reasons.
I just hope it's not a celebrity thing. Like, I hope that a celebrity that, is more Democratic doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's like, I'm running for president now.
Would you vote for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
No.
Really, ever?
I would not. And a lot of the reason why it goes back to when...
what if he ran Republican? What if he went up against J.D. Vance? Would you be like, oh, Dwayne, you have my attention, sir?
I still don't know, because ever since the Hawaii
He's the people's
stuff,
champ.
Ever since the Hawaii stuff happened and him and Oprah appeared on that video, and you had a millionaire standing next to a billionaire, and they were asking people to donate money, and then they could have helped out a lot more. I don't know how much they helped out, realistically, I don't know how much they actually did help out. But from what I know is they were part of the people, I think, that actually bought land on Hawaii after a lot of it burned down because they got it for next to nothing cheap.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of that. It's like, come on, buddy. Like, come on. And so I don't know. I would have to hear what his political, like, again, like we've had Trump before, so we kind of know what he's about. I would have to know more about because celebrities flip flop all the time. Yeah. I would have to know what he would be pushing for on either side before I even made that decision to vote.
Yeah, let's be real. He wouldn't run Republican, but it's kind of funny. Like, the Republican Party is kind of switched over to being, I don't want to say it's like the cool kids club, but it's kind of got like that alternative edge to it now, if that makes sense. It's not like an old boys club anymore. It was.
Well, they speak a lot of the truth now, and a lot of people and it's not like they didn't before, but now it's a lot more abundant, and people are actually like, oh my God, like, we actually have the power to vote for this person now to actually do what we need them to do. So
yeah, that's true. One thing I'll leave you with, just because you kind of brought up like emergency situations, FEMA, stuff like that. You don't even have to comment on this, but I've been seeing this sweep around. I'm sure other people have as well. A former FEMA official kind of found themselves in some hot water recently, because when Hurricane Milton came to town, ravishing communities, homes, everything in its path, one of the best practices that this FEMA official published was to avoid homes advertising Trump.
I remember seeing that. I think Dana brought that up to me about, like, people were just like, they were getting people to go against each other to not help each other during the time of need.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. With that being said, though, episode 41 of the Unscripted Company podcast is in the books. Riley, as always, take us home with some wisdom, enlighten us, send us on our way.
Yeah, our 47th president is in the books. We're definitely more than likely going to have follow-up episodes over the next 90 days. And we don't want to be a political podcast, and we're not going to be, but there are going to be developing stories probably.
Every 4 years will be a political podcast.
Thank you all for at least, for whoever you voted for. I hope that you educated yourselves before you voted for that person. Again, we know that Trump won. We know that he is going to be our president. If you did educate yourself, thank you, because you did your service as an American citizen to make sure that you placed your vote in who you thought was best. If you didn't educate yourself, do better. I'm sorry to say it, but you got to do better. Especially those who might be young and in college. Don't follow the crowd. Educate yourself, research, do whatever you got to do. I hope that this does not divide us more. I hope that, with Trump being our president, I hope that he is the president that hopefully will actually do the good that we need for both sides. And that will actually bring everyone closer together and actually hopefully have that one nation, and I'll say it under God to actually do what needs to be done. I know. But that one nation under God to be that cohesive unit so that we can have one country. So
Well said, sir. And we'll see y'all in the next one.